The diner clock ticked past midnight, its faint echo lost beneath the hiss of the grill and the low hum of an old jukebox playing a forgotten tune. Rain pounded against the windows like restless ghosts, and the flickering neon sign outside washed the cracked linoleum floor in red light. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Emily Carter shook slightly as she poured coffee for a row of bikers who were taking refuge from the storm outside. Her eyes seemed tired, but buried behind that exhaustion lay something deeper, a fear that never left you. She kept glancing toward the fogged-up window, flinching at every small sound, because out there, in the cold rain, someone was watching her. If you still believe in the goodness of this world, if you believe in second chances and the power of good hearts, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because this story might just restore your faith in humanity. Emily had been working at that old roadside diner for nearly 2 years. Life hadn't been gentle with her. Her mother left when she was 16. Her father drank himself into silence, and by 19 she had learned how to survive on her own. The job barely paid her rent for a tiny studio above a garage, but it gave her a fragile sense of peace. That peace ended when he showed up. Jason Miller, a local mechanic, the kind of man who smiled too long and stood too close. At first, it was just awkward. He'd asked her out and she'd declined politely, but soon he started waiting outside after her shifts, following her to the bus stop, sending her flowers she never wanted. When she stopped responding, the gifts turned into threats, notes under her door, footsteps in the hallway at night. Her friends told her to call the police. She did once. They said there wasn't much they could do until something actually happened. That night, with the thunder rolling overhead and the rain blurring the world outside, Emily saw him again. Jason stood across the road under a flickering streetlight, half his face hidden by the storm. Her heart raced as she tried to focus on her work, but panic wrapped itself tightly around her like a vice. Then she noticed someone else. At the far end of the counter sat a man alone, broad-shouldered, his black leather jacket worn by years of wind and road dust. On his back, a faded patch glinted under the neon light. Hell's Angels. His name was Mark Dalton, a man whose reputation spoke louder than his words. Most thought him trouble. To Emily that night, he looked like safety. Her voice was barely more than a whisper when she brought him his coffee. "He won't stop following me," she said, her eyes darting toward the window. Mark looked up slowly. His dark eyes were calm but sharp, assessing. Something in his face shifted when he turned and saw the man outside. Not an expression of anger, but quiet determination. He finished his coffee, set the cup down gently, and in a low, steady voice he said, "Go to the back. Stay there." Emily hesitated only a moment before slipping into the kitchen. A minute later, the bell over the diner door jingled, and Jason walked in, soaked and smirking, scanning the room. But before he could take another step, Mark was on his feet, tall, silent, and squarely between him and the counter. The biker filled the room, tall, silent, unshakable. Jason hesitated, trying to push by him with a nervous laugh, mumbling that he just wanted to talk. But Mark did not budge. His voice was calm and quiet, but firm enough to still a storm. Not tonight. Not ever again. What followed wasn't a fight, no punches, no shouting, but a heavy stillness that froze the air between them. Jason looked into Mark's eyes and realized he wasn't facing anger. He was facing certainty. The kind of strength that didn't need to prove itself. Nobody said a word for a long time. Then Jason just turned and, without another word, he walked out, slamming the door behind him. Outside, the rain swallowed up the sound of his retreat. Emily watched from the doorway of the kitchen, her tears welling up before she could even realize it. By the time she came out, Mark was sitting again, his coffee cold, forgotten. She tried to thank him, but her voice caught in her throat. He gave a small nod. "You're safe now," he said simply. Then he placed a few folded bills on the counter, far more than the coffee cost, and walked out into the rain. Moments later, the low growl of his motorcycle disappeared into the night. But that wasn't the end. The following morning, as Emily came in to open the diner, she found a note slipped under the door. It wasn't from Jason, it was from Mark. In rough, steady handwriting it said, "If he ever comes near you again, tell them the angels are watching." She didn't know what to feel: fear, gratitude, incredulity, perhaps all of these feelings at once. But over the course of the next days, Jason was gone. He'd stopped showing up. He stopped calling. The word in town was he had sold his car and left quickly. Nobody knew where he went, and nobody really asked. Life slowly began to settle again. Emily began to smile more. She laughed with customers, saved a little money, even began taking night classes at the community college. But sometimes, late at night, when the streets were quiet, she'd hear the faint echo of motorcycles in the distance. She'd look out her window and half expect to see that same black leather jacket under the streetlight standing guard. Months later, a convoy of Hell's Angels rolled into town for a charity ride to raise money for a children's hospital. Emily was working that morning when she saw them pull up outside. And there he was, Mark Dalton, unchanged, steady, eyes sharp but kind. Their eyes met across the diner, and for the first time she smiled without fear. He nodded once. No words needed to be spoken. Between them stood an unspoken truth. Sometimes those whom the world fears most protect it when no one else will. That night, with the closing of the shop, Emily stepped outside into the starry sky. The rain had stopped. The air was still. She whispered a quiet thank you out to the dark, knowing somewhere out there, a group of men the world misunderstood were riding through the night, not as outlaws, but as guardians. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that strength can wear leather and kindness can hide behind a scarred face, then please like, comment, and share this video. Help this story reach someone who needs to remember that there are still good people out there. And before you leave, let us know in the comments, do you believe even the toughest of hearts can hold compassion? Sometimes the angels we pray for ride motorcycles.